There you go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to One More with Danny Coleman. I am your host, Danny Coleman. This is episode number 4 of One More with Danny Coleman. I want to apologize before we get started this evening for our technical difficulties. We've got them all straightened out for now, and everything will be good. So I apologize for the delay in coming on. Maybe it's the Nash. Maybe it's the Halloween gremlins, bud. Maybe it's the spirits.
Maybe.
You think?
I think so.
It is the thinnest.
It could be.
When the wall is the thinnest between the spirit world and the realm, the living. We'll get to that in a minute because we have a great guest lined up this evening here on One More with Danny Coleman, which is coming to you live from Monmouth Music in Red Bank, New Jersey, 30 Monmouth Street in Red Bank, New Jersey. We also have a brand new sponsor this evening. Nash, we got a new sponsor who gave us these beautiful pastries that you see on the table in front of you, as well as coffee out there for the cast and crew. And that Excellent. Will be 32 Monmouth Street, right next door, Antoinette Boulangerie, which is a great pastry and coffee shop right next door. We'll have a little bit more about them later on in the program. We are also sponsored, once again, by Monmouth Music, and I want to thank Mario for allowing us to set up shop here in his music store.
Thank you, Mario.
Beautiful downtown Red Bank. And by the Bright Lights on Broad Street, the group from the Downtown All-Stars, who will be sponsoring another charity album, Magic on the Navasink, for this year. But I'm going to get right to this tonight since we were delayed a little bit, and it is Halloween. And what we have this evening with us, or who we have with us this evening, and what.
And what, yes.
Because we have a paranormal investigator / medium / Reiki master.
Keep going.
/ what am I forgetting?
Psychic, aerospace engineer. We have all sorts of things to talk about. So, yeah, it's a good enough start. Thank you, Danny.
There you go. Mr. Jeff Carpenter. Hello, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see you there, sir. Thank you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was, no pun intended, dead surprised that you were available on Halloween.
I'd like to say that I was that busy. I had a few other things going on, but I must admit that when I got the contact for actually this show, I pretty much said, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm turning everything else off, shutting everything else down. I'm coming here, regardless of how mad they were at me. But I worked it out, and we're all good.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to hear.
Oh, yeah, of course. This is, the idea and the opportunity to be here on Halloween, especially in this place, this specific building.
We got a new
I
set.
couldn't pass it up.
The crew built a new set here behind us. We got, I don't know, can they see that back there, Nash? Check that out. The Matt did a great job, and you guys did a great job on making it Halloweenish.
Halloweenish, sure.
But the reason I brought you in tonight, being Halloween, excuse me, is that you are a paranormal investigator. But this is relatively new for you.
Yeah, I would say that it's a very different approach I have now. The idea of being a paranormal investigator, I've been one for, I'd say a decade. So I've been going around, taking all the pictures, trying to find all the voices, really looking to see what I can capture in different places. I travel myself. I don't care if I'm alone. Personally, I don't really care if I have someone sitting next to me that has to approve or even prove of what I saw or captured. It's all for me. But I say it's different because the relatively new part is the fact that the entire paranormal sensitivity, the psychic mediumship, that entire awakening changes when you go on a paranormal investigation. It's one thing to say you take 1,000 pictures and you hope you got an orb or you have a voice or, and you spend 6 hours and get 30 seconds worth of stuff. If you really are going to connect to them and you can talk to them and they respond to you, that 50 pictures versus 1,000 has 20 bits of evidence and you get all sorts of more stuff. And they sometimes really enjoy showing off. So the whole psychic phenomenon with becoming a medium has really amped up the entire paranormal investigation work I do.
For you. And you became a medium or discovered that you could communicate with the spirit world. How?
Very interesting story because I come from a scientific background. I really was a rocket scientist.
So you had that whole,
Yeah.
science versus, okay.
The scientist in me always believed, and I loved the TV shows, I loved all the evidence, but I was always stuck on evidence. Frankly, a lot of people who would be watching the TV shows want to know all the pieces that a medium would show you. I didn't really care. It didn't matter to me that someone else said, I just had this experience. Because I wanted it too. I wanted the video, or I wanted the audio, or some kind of object manipulation so I could share in the experience. Well, I kind of lost a bet in order to take a Reiki class. And Reiki, as a Japanese energy healing practitioner, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I knew about it. I kind of knew where it went. I sort of knew something about it. But I decided I'm a man of my word and went into the class. And I sat there. And I was the guy who was humming and hawing and disturbing everyone else in the class. Because not that I didn't believe, but I never thought I'd do anything. So when I'm sitting there, and I finally said, well, I paid for this. I mean, I might as well do something in it. I might as well get something out of it. And I started having what the only thing I can describe as psychic visions. I turned to the person next to me and said, stop fighting with your grandmother. She's really sick. She's in her hospital bed, and she really feels guilty. She can't help you, and you're not helping. And I just turned away as if I didn't even say it myself. And she turns to me, and she's crying in the class. Now, I'd like to say I was, proud and took her aside and apologized. I said, no, how much was that? What? How much of that was real? All of it. Well, when did you last see her? Last night. And I started grilling her on how accurate this was. What I didn't know is that I really started to get into the Reiki practice. Now, Reiki itself is basically scientific. Energy and healing, they all go together. But what I didn't expect very soon after that, when I started to practice, is that reading a person who's living really wasn't that different than reading a person who has passed on. Either they're earthbound or their loved ones who's crossed over. And it's kind of disturbing. And an entire life full of nothing, of visions or anything like that, psychic anything, to 3 months after this class, seeing silhouettes of people walk down the street and everyone looking at you like you're a crazy man. I started to interact with them and sense them, and then probably only for about the past year did I start working on the actual medium part and communicating and calling and offering myself to speak with them. And it's something that continues to grow. It's something that I actually offer as part of my own business, and it's been quite a ride. I mean, the good thing is that the scientist in me hasn't doubted it. Because I can explain it. I can explain it scientifically. So that's the only way my left brain and the right brain have ever come together.
Now, you said something in there that I find very interesting. That you said your whole life you never, I can't remember the exact words you used, but basically until you took that class, you really never had
yes,
or you think, or you say,
I never recognized or acknowledged, yes,
a spiritual or paranormal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, they just get smacked over the head with it, constantly, and they're just struggling to explain. I had a medium say to me one time, if a child says to you, there are monsters under my bed, he may be right, because
don't discount it.
Because they say that when I say they, the psychic medium community, that children and pets are the most sensitive.
I love working with both of them.
To the other realm.
I mean, even with just the idea of Reiki and energy, animals love it. They respond to it. Children are so much more open than we are as adults that I totally understand that.
That's the key. You have to be open.
Totally agree.
You have to understand that. Now, see, I'm a big proponent of the universe puts you exactly where you're supposed to be. For whatever reason.
Not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I'd like to be getting to that stage, and I'm still working on it with the scientific side.
And I only say that because, everybody says a more common way of putting it is everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. How many times have we heard everything happens for a reason, right? So I have an aunt who has said that to me since I was, don't worry, Danny, everything happens for a reason. When's it going to stop happening?
When's it going to stop happening? Yes.
But I'm a firm believer that you're where you're supposed to be. All your struggles, all your triumphs, all your tribulations are all part of the journey. And until you can accept a lot of things,
I
you're
agree.
going to be kind of like treading water on that journey. And you're just going to keep,
Yes.
and I'm using my hand here for those at home, because that's what it's kind of like. You're just kind of
That path.
back and forth, right? So you have to. We're also a product of our own decisions. Now, why did we make those decisions? Is the question. I mean, this gets into a lot of people believe in spirit guides or Indian shaman and things that allow them to see or predict the future. And one of the problems that you have in this business that you're in, and with people who are gifted in this way, is that there are a lot of fakes, a lot of snake oil being sold out there.
I can't agree more. I actually, personally, I get very frustrated at listening to people ask questions rather than make statements. Because if you're asking questions, then you're really trying to guide the discussion down a specific path to where you can say, see, now I know what you're saying. Well, yeah, because it's suggestive discussions versus just saying, here's a statement, I trust it. Half the time you say you don't even care if you believe it or not. I know it's real because I have the entire message. And you're absolutely right about that path, because not only when you're getting to the point of where you should be, you feel that kind of change, you also end up getting a lot more than just one step in the path. You have 6 or 7 open up in front of you, and then, just like you say, when's it going to stop? When's it going to stop?
Right. Now, I mean, and it manifests itself in many different ways. For those of you at home who are watching, or if you're just tuning in, we got started late. Once again, this is One More with Danny Coleman. I'm Danny Coleman. My guest is paranormal investigator, medium, Reiki master, Jeff Carpenter, rocket scientist, Jeff Carpenter.
Yes.
It covers the whole gamut of things. We're discussing the paranormal, be it Halloween, here in Red Bank, from Monmouth Music, and we just want it to understand, like, how many times you go home, you take a picture, it's all whited out. Oh, look at that big white circle back there. It's not. There's a good chance it's not just because somebody turned on a light or the lighting was poor. It's a good chance that it's spirit energy.
I agree. One of the things I also try to make sure that we're sharing is that orbs, especially the reflective orbs, they're the natural state of energy. The small spherical ones can be either paranormal. It can really just be in the natural state of, you can go out your backyard and catch all those orbs. When you start to see the change in them, the different shapes, when they're going against the natural physics of that energy, then you got to start to wonder what that is. And you were talking earlier about a face. That's not the natural state of energy. Having a face look at you with eyes and a nose, you actually now really need to recognize we're totally outnumbered. I mean, if you really want to talk about spirits, we're outnumbered by thousands wandering around. And why wouldn't they be looking at around? It's a lot of people are here, a lot of them are crossed over. So, of course, that those white flashes and balls of light, you got to look at them more closely.
Because they could be. And I showed you a picture.
Yes.
Which hopefully later Matt will be able to put up from the production room. But I showed you a picture of my nephew in a very haunted building in Bordentown, a place that he and his former partner, used to own. And if that you saw the size of that orb over his head. Now, when we take the picture, that's not there.
That's not there. No.
But I showed you what happens when you enlarge it, and you can see the face in there.
See the face? Absolutely. There's
Right?
no doubt in my mind, anyway.
Correct. So, okay, so
It was almost like that orb photobombed your nephew,
Your nephew,
right
right.
in the spot. He's waving like this, and suddenly there's a face behind him. Yes.
apparently, from what I gather, it's a young boy named Billy, little blonde kid,
Okay.
9 years old, very mischievous. Passed away in the 1800s. Bordentown is a very old city. That has been a bank location pretty much from the foundation of the town. Thomas Paine. The Thomas Paine house is only a block down the street. Thomas Paine, the American
Right.
author and poet, he owned a home in Bordentown City. Napoleon Bonaparte's brother owned a big mansion at the outskirts of Bordentown City.
Well, the other thing about that
tunnels out to
picture
Delaware.
the picture that's amazing is the fact that if we're really talking about, you said he was 8 years old, the boy, 8, 9,
8, 9, somewhere around there.
How tall is your nephew?
He's like 6'4", 6'5".
And it's above his head.
Above his head.
So you start to say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that size or height means anything to energy, so why not?
So talk to us about the very first time, or any of your experiences. Give us, you were saying a little bit before we went on the air, where it was somewhat of a demonic experience that you had.
Yeah, I'll start
with... Was
with...
that the worst one, or was there worse?
No, there were worse ones than that. That was actually just almost a brushing. But the first experience I had is actually in the mortuary, the Wat and Tarbell mortuary at Tombstone. And for all you who know Tombstone, Arizona, the OK Corral, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday.
A lot of anger there.
It's a very interesting place. I'm actually a member of the Sister Paranormal Investigators, whose headquarters is in that place. Well, of course, since it was all opening up at that time, it was only 3 months after I took that class that I decided to go on a ghost tour. I always wanted to go to a ghost tour. I've gone on several, and I enjoy it. That was the very first time I actually started seeing the shadows, the boots with spurs on them, silhouettes standing at a bar, when I've never seen anything like that, or maybe I just didn't open up to it. And it was also the first weekend where I had my first contact. A shadow figure, and we know who that is, actually Indian Charlie, who actually put his hands on top of mine. My hands disappeared. His shadow actually blocked out my hands. I felt his energy move through me, and everyone in the bar actually heard the footsteps walk past as I was standing there. I could never explain it. I never understood how it was, but it was actually my friend, who was one of the sisters that works there, said, you know what? You're a sensitive and you're in denial. You just went through all that stuff and you're still denying it? We have the video of it. We have the pictures of it. You have the sound of it. What else do you want? It was a big turning point for me to finally accept that this whole opening, and it wasn't just Reiki. It wasn't just reading people and healing. It was an energy sensitivity and a paranormal sensitivity that I haven't even explored yet. Some of the craziest things I've seen were actually, and I know a lot of people probably know this place, Eastern State Penitentiary.
In Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. It's an entire, if you haven't been there, it's an entire city block that is dedicated to a prison. I think closed in 1970, 1971, and then was bought in 1995 by the city, and now it's a museum. Right. They have terror behind the walls, but that's not even nearly as interesting as the fact that my team had an investigation there. We had a nighttime investigation, and if you've been there before, when you go on the nighttime investigations, you get to go into places you don't go to during the day. They lock it all down. It's not really safe. It's still crumbling. They didn't do a lot of work in the hallways for the cell blocks, but those were the most active anywhere. And we actually have pictures, audio, and video evidence of the fact that 2 shadow prisoners that were literally lurking on, there's a 3-floor cell block. They were living on the 2nd floor. They saw us walk into the chamber. They jumped down and started attacking us. I mean, literally punches, scratches. And I was not, absolutely. I have pictures of the scratches on the back of my neck. And at that point in time, it was my own fault because I had been practicing Reiki. And in Reiki and energy healing, you can also protect yourself, shielding, bubbling up, all those types of things. And I wasn't prepared. We thought we were playing with this little child that was running all over the place until we actually saw 2 men jump down. So, and all 4 of us saw this to the point where we were actually able to use energy to force these 2 shadows out of the way. And they had, and you can see the pictures, they have like 7, 8, 9 spirits themselves in thrall, basically enslaved. And they're using their energy to manifest and run around and basically plague everybody who walks through these halls.
So that was like their prison gang.
That was their prison gang. They were really there. And it wasn't, a lot of people start wondering about, was it just an accident? They were very meticulous. Half of us went down the hallway, 1 jumped down, and the other one separated us. So they were totally separate. Now we're in 3 different groups, and they're in the middle, making sure they can address us separately. They were dividing and conquering, if you want to call it that. Except they didn't conquer. We had been able to force them out of the area, and to this day, that place still gives me the chills as you walk into that specific spot because, I hate to say this, I think they know every time I'm in the area now. because they know my energy when I force them away. So now they know when a big beacon, if you want to call it that, when I come back. The demonic discussion is really the fact that part of the energy healing and part of Reiki includes spirit release, spirit rescue, trying to help energy, because it's really energy, move along. And even just walking down the street in New York, there's so many issues with people you go past. Some people are empathic. They know they hate walking in New York because they feel that person's energy. And they don't want any of that stuff, and no one's really happy. And they don't want, even with the people who just don't want to even see you.
That's why I hate the subway.
That's even a great example. You're sitting in that tiny little car, and you feel everyone around you. Like, I can't stand it.
Everybody feels angry, yeah.
In this particular case, this was another paranormal investigator who had been in a lot of places that he doesn't necessarily should be, and he had some attachments. And when I say attachments, it's very much like a person attachment. You have emotions, your family has attachments. You can go to there's an Uncle Joe that you just can't sit next to because all he does is drain you. You feel it all day long.
And and the dark spirits attach themselves.
Absolutely.
Dark energy, yes.
When you're always tired, and no matter what you do, and it's changing your relationship with your new fiancé, with your family, and you're becoming a recluse, you got to start wondering, especially in the paranormal world, if you're being a paranormal investigator, what do you got going on? And one of the things, he had 2 spirit attachments that I worked in conjunction with someone else to really start separating. The third, the only way I can describe it is it was non-human demonic. He really had this black 4-foot-tall attachment that I could actually see the corner of my eyes staring, looking at him, draining him daily. I mean, just constant. We were able to cut that cord, and I wasn't even sure. Even then, even if all I've seen, I'm still going, am I really believing this? Am I really believing this? I mean, this is really true. Except that everyone in the other room, including the room I'm in, hear the growl. As soon as I go like this, you can't see anything. It's just me waving my hand in the air. But I'm doing that physically to cut the cord, that attachment. When you hear an entire, everyone's looking around. What was that? It just so happens that and the whole place went black. And then it tried to attach to me. My only appreciation of everything I've done is the fact that as a Reiki master, I've learned to protect myself from people, from spirits. I was strong enough to resist that. And then he disappeared. We haven't seen him again, but just even if you don't want to even believe all that stuff, the fact that as soon as we were done, they were hugging and kissing and thanking everybody. His entire demeanor changed. Yeah. Even the color in his face came back. In fact, he had these 2 little red marks in his back where we were just trying to cut things that he never even knew were there, and they went away. So all I can say is I'm glad to help him, but when you start getting into that kind of deep fights, if you want to call it that, I guess I can say that that's actually part of my next step. Starting to work on, if you want to call it the big fight, the main event. The main event of the big angels and demons type thing, I'm kind of being drawn in.
If you're just clicking on, tuning in, what is that, Matt? Talk to me. Tuning in. This is One More with Danny Coleman. My guest is Jeff Carpenter, and we have a new sponsor this evening here on One More with Danny Coleman, and that is Antoinette Boulangerie. They specialize in creating delicate and sophisticated works of art using only the highest quality ingredients. Located at 32 Monmouth Street in the heart of downtown Red Bank, they are a fully operational bakery with all baking done on the premises daily. In addition to the handmade variety of croissants in Danish, Antoinette's also offers a dizzying array of traditional French pastries, macaroons, cookies, and savory treats. Find us at AntoinetteBoulangerie.com. And I want to thank them for the coffee and the Danish and this stuff.
They've been great. Oh, yeah. I was out. They were complaining about how many there were. I don't think there's that many left, actually, at the end of that. These are really good. If
any of these spirits decide they want this, that's the fight to the death will begin now.
I'm happy to.
Although
that's
they're
okay.
already dead, so they're ahead of us. Matt, are you coming in, Matt? Matt wants to talk. Here comes the owner, the CEO,
I lost my chair
the
already.
C-man. See,
Let's get this equipment out of your way.
This is Matt Smith.
Came the prop table.
He is the director and producer of One More with Danny Coleman. And Matt's going to talk briefly with Jeff here about, is this Overbrook?
Well, I want to be a part of this conversation because you guys were talking about experiences before, and I've got stories for days on that.
Because I got an email, too, from a viewer that we'll get to also before the end of the show. So
Okay.
get everybody involved.
But I wanted to jump back to what you said before about kids and pets with their sensitivity. Because going back to when I was probably about, I don't know, my mother can help me with this, 4 or 5. We used to live in a house here in Red Bank over on Branch Avenue. And one day we were leaving and I'm going out the back door and I turn around and I just see this tall, lanky man in white going from the dining room to the basement. So.
Did you see him again?
No, but apparently I've seen a fat lady in the attic before.
So the reason I asked about if you saw him again is does he keep going through that particular
Isn't that
path?
a Little Feet song? Wait, that's Fat Man in a Bathtub.
Fat man in a bathtub. Yes, I knew where you're going with that.
Fat
Yes.
lady in the attic. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, fat lady in the attic, fat man in a bathtub. Maybe they're related or
That
something.
could be.
But I did have another experience in the dining room prior to that where I had this RC car and it's going into the dining room to get it, and I just see it going back and forth by itself and going around in circles, and I walk into the room, just looked at it, went nope, and left and never touched it again.
It's really not all that surprising if you're going to talk about the fact that we're all energy anyway. That the easiest thing to do is to make something that's made of energy or a battery or anything like that run around. It's usually easier than us because we actually have our own emotional and other defenses. That car, that's usually what you see. Manipulation is really easy. It's for them anyway.
I work in a hospital by day. Yes, I'm not just a successful YouTube host like I know you all think, but I work in a hospital by day, and the ICU. People die there every day. Or that's could be their last stop. And sometimes there'll be an empty room. It'll be empty for a couple days, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the machines just start working. Bloop, 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 bloop. And there's a heartbeat.
Yeah, I was about to say this is a heart. This is the pulse.
There's nobody in there, and until a nurse will go in and say, "All right, knock it off," and then it just flatlines, and it's the weirdest thing, So I mean, the spirits and energy are everywhere.
Yeah.
As a child, as you said, there were so many things that happened to me as a kid. Some of them I couldn't explain. Like I used to have this digital clock that would be on a shelf above my bed.
Okay.
On like a wall here, and my bed would be this way. And the digital clock would be up there. Well, across from that was a closet, and on the closet hung a mirror.
Yeah.
Sometimes something, or for whatever reason, I'd sit straight up in bed in the middle of the night. I'm like 9 years old. And I would look over, and I could see the digital clock in the mirror.
Right.
Sometimes.
Okay, I'll bite.
And at that
Was the door open, or
no, the door was closed.
It was still closed.
But it was
okay.
like there was a shadow blocking
Oh,
it. And as an
okay.
8 or 9 year old kid, you want to do one of two things. You want to either dive underneath and pull the covers over your head and put the pillow over your head, because the chills I would get at that young age were just oppressive.
Yeah.
Or you go into your parents' room and you wake them up, and then they're like, "Go back to bed." So it's like, I'll just cut out the middleman and I'll just
yes.
hide under the covers. But kids and dogs. Dogs. You ever see a dog will walk, or a cat all of a sudden will start at nothing? Or a dog will walk across the room and just sit down and start staring around or looking. They're all very sensitive to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, I've had experiences all my life. I had a home that my marital residence that my ex-wife and I used to share. Every year, I could tell you stuff now, we just don't have enough time. I'm not going to take away from you, but every year between December 15th and December 18th, when a man who lived there used to live there. He and his wife divorced.
Mm-hmm.
She let him move back in. When he came down, he developed cancer. Put him in a hospital. As he convalesced, couldn't convalesce at home anymore. 3 days later, he died. And it was somewhere between December 15th and December 18th. Okay? I was a UPS guy for 20 years. He was a mailman. He liked to drink. He would go out to the bars. Whenever paranormal experiences occurred in my home, it was always between 2 and 3 a.m. But every year between the 15th and the 18th, on my front door, and I'd go down and open it up. All right, Eddie, where are you? The first year, I didn't know who it was. Who the heck's waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning? There's nobody there. I shut the front door. Now, I have my 80-pound or 90-pound German Shepherd with me at the time, so she was just kind of, staring. I go to walk back up the steps, and now I hear the same knock coming from the closet. All right, now I'm a little freaked out.
Well, you opened the door, so he came in, and he's just going to follow you upstairs.
Knocked on the closet. But every year that we lived there, from 1994 until 2004, when I left the home, that knock would occur.
A lot of people would have left.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have said.
There's much more to it.
When you say 10 years, a lot of people would have left.
Yep.
It
Or
always
my
seems-
son would sit straight up in bed. Eddie's here, and that was the guy's name. He was like 2 years old. Oh, Eddie reads to me. Who the heck is Eddie?
Oh, wow.
And then we found out who Eddie was.
Spirits and apparitions always seem to have the perfect timing on everything, because a friend of my mother's has a house that there have been multiple deaths in, but at the same time, every night at 3-something in the morning, everything goes off. You'll hear footsteps in the attic. There'll be cold spots all over the place, and even just walking through that house during a normal hour, there'd be you just get this sense of a presence from a certain corner.
Now, are they creatures of habit? In what you've encountered, are they creatures of habit? I mean, why is it sometime between 2 and 3 every morning? Why is it same time every night in this woman's property?
It really depends. Some of them actually have a specific time that, like you're talking about, with those specific days. Those days are very significant to that person or the passed on person. The 3 a.m. witching hour is part of the reason why it's funny how we talk about that time frame being the dark of the night, and we give it that power itself. We actually say it's going to be the witching hour, so they go and take advantage of it. They're charged up enough all night long to use that time frame. But it doesn't matter. When you talk about the person, this tall, slender man, what time of day was it?
Probably about 6 or 7 o'clock.
Doesn't matter. That whole thing, you can walk around and find these things. In fact, sometimes, like even on a Halloween, sometimes I feel that the Halloween is not exactly their favorite day because they're expected to perform.
Yeah.
They said, "No, I don't want. Come on, guys, I don't want to do that." But 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever time frame, especially as intelligent hauntings, rather than just the residual energy just keeps going over and over again. The intelligent hauntings, if you have someone who's in doubt, a lot of times they're going to show you. They're going to show you that there's a difference. They're going to show you a moving object, a door opening. But when everyone's quiet in the middle of the night, that's usually when they're charging up at night and then making the biggest scene at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, because stuff used to crash in my house, and I would never find what it was. I mean, like loud bang. What the heck was that? The funny thing is, when I moved into that marital home, the woman that we bought the house from, she was the original owner. Oh, my ex-husband gave me that holly tree out there.
Okay.
It's bloomed every year for 25 years. She moved out. We moved in the week before Memorial Day, 1994. By June, the holly tree was dead. Okay, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a signal, now that she's moved on, and maybe he just killed the holly tree. Think nothing of it. Now the house had a fireplace, so I cut up the holly tree, put it on the wood pile. Went out to a birthday party the next afternoon. I come home, every one of those logs from that holly tree were strewn all over my yard. None of the other logs from the wood pile were moved, just the holly tree. And you start thinking,
That'll work.
Okay, why? But So there's just unexplained phenomena. What was that show? Wasn't there a show like that, Unexplained Phenomena, that was on years ago?
Yeah.
Not Leonard Nimoy with In Search of, but there was like unexplained phenomena.
There's something along those lines, yeah.
When I was a kid, I was about 8 years old. I bought the entire series, the Time Life books of the unexplained and the paranormal, and.
Well, as a kid, you sound like you had your own experiences, so it would be interesting enough to find out.
I was like 12 years old. I convinced my mother to let me buy. I need them for school reports, Mom. I know. So now she's like, yeah. And of course, when I was 12, I also got my first Ouija board, which lasted 2 weeks. My mother made me take it back. But that's a whole nother story. So, how often do you get calls about investigations?
A lot of the investigations I'm doing are kind of on my own or setting up with my teams, but a lot of people, especially, you'd be surprised when you actually offer that as a service, you start to get a lot of questions, and I don't really know, and I was going to bring that up earlier. When you get a group of people that sit there and talk about what they went through, you'll end up hearing, I don't really know if I believe in that, but this one time, and this is always the one time, and I said, well, then what? You can't explain it? No. Well, what would you like me to do about it? And then I tell them what happened. Because psychically, I start to connect with them and say, well, this happened and your brother's picture rattled on the wall. How did you know that? What do you mean, how did I do that? You're the one who's saying you don't believe it, but now you're telling me the one time.
Right.
So you start getting into even just the people who don't feel comfortable in their homes. I mean, you're talking about moving in a new home. Buying a new home, when it's not your energy in it. I get a lot of calls just to say, can you just come in and cleanse it? Just get rid of that other person's energy. It might not even necessarily be paranormal until you recognize it just keeps going. And you start hearing this when you walk into the building. Yeah, you got more than just the last owner here energy. You got something else making sure you don't want to feel comfortable here.
Now, how do you cleanse it? I know I smudge often. Matter of fact, just yesterday.
Well, you should. You actually should. Smudging is great. I use sage as well as smudges, but I also use a lot of sea salt. Yeah. Sea salt and water.
Around the doorways, right?
Around the doorways and the windows, up in the attic. But
I knew somebody who...
Wait, before you go on with that, Matt,
sure, go ahead.
Just for the viewers at home, smudging is sage. Now, they sell it in what looks like... my favorite reference is from Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke, when they were first driving in the van and they had a marijuana cigarette about this long by about this thick. But smudging looks like that. They're about this long by about that thick, and you can get them. You get the sage. It's usually white sage, right?
You can get the white sage. They actually have started making lavender sage, depending on the types of thing. But it really looks like a interwoven set of strands that then becomes what you burn. And the smoke is what really starts to clean away the energy. And that's part of the science of it, too. The whole idea of sage includes smell, includes burning, and includes smoke, all of which are changing energy. Mm-hmm. They're breaking it up.
Right. So go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry. Then I want to get to this.
Talking about the salt, people that I used to work with, they went to an abandoned hospital. I'm not going to name where. But they were there on an assignment, and while they were there, 3 of them got followed home by something. And from what they were telling me is like it started with one person. They started talking to somebody else about it, and then one of the producers overheard and like, yeah, that's been experiencing the same thing. And the third one came forward and was experiencing the same thing. And a medium told them sea salt or salt in the corner of the rooms. Problem went away after that.
A lot of that following is actually then broken by the fact that the salt is a natural conductive energy. It actually blocks out that energy and starts to absorb it. That's exactly what the salt is for.
Yeah.
Now, do you have websites or anything?
Yeah, as part of my business, Dimensions Reiki, I have the dimensionsreiki.com site. I have started talking about the paranormal, in fact, house cleansing. You asked about house cleansing. I actually do that as part of the business. One of the craziest things I had ever experienced is getting rid of the previous owner of a building. He didn't like he was a bigot. He didn't like the fact that the family that's in there now is Hindu. And I guess he actually showed himself to me. He had a little, horseshoe, bald top head, big nose. And it was so telling as to the idea that they're not all the ghosts that are running around. They're not necessarily stuck. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them choose. They might choose not to go, but they're making a choice. This guy gave me the greatest answer. I was a little worried that I was going to get rid of him. This is actually a friend of mine. So I'd really like to. I sat there. He sat next to me in the couch. You felt the whole couch drop. I finally said, look, why do you want to be here? Why are you still here? They don't want you here. You don't like them. They've changed your house to the point where you don't like it either. Why are you still here? Your family, I'm sure, is waiting for you on the other side. Just go. Just go. Cross over. He showed me exactly why they stay. He said, I didn't like my family when they were alive. I'm not going to spend eternity with them. And it was just this entire light bulb going off saying, you know what? We really do choose. Just like all the things we choose here when we cross, we choose all that stuff too. So when you start to get into house cleansing and removing spirits and spirit rescue, not only do you have to say just go, you have to figure out what's keeping them there too. And sometimes they'll tell you, and sometimes they're just totally insane and go running by screaming at the top of their lungs. You're like, well, I don't know if I can help you because I can't even communicate.
Right. How about that? Well, we have an email, but what I'm going to do is, Nash, I'm going to go a little early here. I'm going to read this sponsorship here because I want to get to this email from a viewer down in Florida, actually. But remember to keep your eyes open for the next charity compilation CD produced by the Downtown All-Stars of Red Bank. Magic on the Navasink will feature the original works by artists such as Colossal Street Jam, Dawn Hopkins, DJ Pinelli, and John Hathaway. Magic on the Navasink is being produced to benefit the Red Banks Elks Lodge number 233 Veteran Support Programs. And that's right over here on, what's this, where the downtown is? Why am I drawing blank? Front Street.
It's on
right.
Front Street.
Because Broad Street's right out here, yeah. The Downtown All-Stars first compilation CD, Bright Lights on Broad Street, was in support of Little Kids Rock, which provides free music instruction and instruments to underserved public school districts across the United States. And that's available on the Downtown All-Stars website, as well as from select retailers. Downtown All-Stars of Red Bank, LLC, is a collective of local musicians and performing artists bound together to raise both funds and awareness for charities and worthy causes using the immeasurable power of music. Go to redbankallstars.com and follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/redbankallstars for more information. And they do that once a year to raise money for a different charity, and that's great. A lot of those musicians I know personally. So, and I said I was going to talk to you about this this email. It's kind of interesting. Now, it's a husband and wife.
Okay.
Okay, a husband and wife said they've been interested in the paranormal and science of it all forever. And then they visited a museum called the May Stinger House located in Brooksville, Florida.
Okay.
It's well known to be haunted, and they only give tours at night. Only. Nothing during the day. It's all at night. By day, it's a museum that's open to the public, but the ghost tours are only at night. Scott, which is her husband, Scott and Cindy is her name, they had done the night tour of the house, and they actually have pictures with apparitions in the windows and a figure looking in at them. Now, she says it was exciting, but yet scary, too. So now they become hooked. They want to start to become ghost hunters, right? So excuse me. They went to a library presentation in Florida. Now, they're from Central Florida, around the Ocala area, somewhere between Ocala and Orlando, I believe. They ran into a paranormal team from Orlando, Florida, called Beyond Investigators. And much like you, this team apparently receives calls from people who have experiences in their homes.
In their homes, right.
They do not charge for their services, and their theories are science-based, which is, I want to get into that with you for a second. But they showed camera footage, and they heard EVPs, and EVPs are...
Want to make sure that we're actually talking about EVPs. The electronic voice phenomenon is the imprint of the energy on the recorder. If you actually hear that and you heard it and you record it, it's more of a disembodied voice. It's not. Right. If you don't hear it, then the EVP is what you really categorize it as.
Categorize, correct. And they handle ghost huntings and so on and so forth. So they become like amateur ghost hunters. So now they're out ghost hunting, and they've captured images and silhouettes. She said she'll forward pictures if I like. No, Sin, I believe you. If you're watching, I believe you. Because trust me, I get it.
I'd definitely like to see this, though.
I'll have her forward them to you. But she doesn't have to send them now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone here is not believing you with all the experiences we've been talking about.
Right? They have a psychic medium on their team who converses prior to going in with them to the investigation, I guess, to kind of lay the groundwork, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Maybe?
you can try to find hot spots, look for where you want to go. Also, make sure that you're asking for protection, because the mediums, they're the first person who don't want to be open with as they're walking through these places. So they're really setting the stage for everyone else going in.
Right now, apparently, though, they don't tell her anything other than the location that they're going to go to. They don't know history about the building or so on and so forth, and or what they are experiencing at the moment or at the time, and they just basically tell her that she then comes back with her take on the residents and the entities that they may encounter. So, do you ever do that for people? Do you ever do like phone readings?
I've done some phone readings. I've done some. Most of those phone readings are based on loved ones that have passed, so they really want to communicate with that. I haven't done any for paranormal investigations, but I have gone through several places that are allegedly haunted and given my take for a reference to another team coming in behind me and seeing then what they could get. Because especially if you go to a new place.
Right.
A lot of times you go to a new place, you have no idea what you're looking for. You can spend all day in room A and everyone's sitting up in the attic or something like that. Yeah. So you start to do even just a sensitivity sweep. And then, like you're talking about, you want the evidence. You want the equipment to show that scientific difference.
Which is what she gets into next here, where they use a... do you have one with you, an Ovilus?
I don't have an Ovilus with me. But
okay. We talked before I went on the air. There's a Ghost Hunter app that you can download for an iPhone, which does the same basic
thing. The
thing.
idea of the Ovilus is that entities can manipulate the energy in the box to make words. So you have a specific set of frequencies and digits and digital input that you manipulate energy-wise, and it makes a word that we read. So hopefully, if it continues a stream of words that make sense, you're actually getting a good communicator.
Yeah, and I have it. There's like 2,000
I had
words.
that a while ago.
There's like 2,000 words that are contained in the
and they all just
vocabulary of these.
Yeah, it's like saying,
comes from
I
the
want to
frequency?
say hurt, and it's like 100 megahertz. I want to say walk, and it's 200 megahertz.
Okay.
So you actually, they're supposed to be able to manipulate the frequencies and energy in the Ovilus. The Ovilus then prints out what they actually say, and a lot of times you have the words. You're sitting there, you're walking down the hallway, and you suddenly hear, stop. And it's the Ovilus telling you to stop. Yeah. Candle. Past. You start wondering, okay, then you start putting together all those pieces, but it's really because they're manipulating the energy in the Ovilus to come out with that word.
That's very cool.
Right.
Works pretty well, too.
Yep. And she goes on to say that they send out multiple, like they set up cameras and so on and so forth. And what do they say here? We entered a child's bedroom and started to ask questions, but we got no response. I could see multiple orbs floating around while videotaping. Team leader is provoking and calling it a coward, telling it you need to leave this family alone and leave. I guess it was a house cleansing type of thing. Across the Ovilus comes the word no. He continues to provoke the entity of spirit, and then we hear F you that he was holding. The psychic threatens to call on St. Michael the angel and have him remove the entity's spirit. Again, the spirit box says ugly, meaning that the psychic is being ugly and mean. The entity did not want to leave on its own. The teen ended up doing a house cleansing to get rid of the spirit a week later. Now, I mean, some of them are incredibly stubborn. And then you have here where she goes on to say that very interesting EVPs, and the team leader's cross was pulled while it was on his neck. We talked about that too prior to going on the air, actual physical touching. I have a friend whose house that I watch, and the basement is full of negative energy. Yeah. The dog will sit there and just low growl at the door
Yeah.
entire time that I'm in the house. I've come in, the radio's been on, same time every day.
That's crazy.
You know, and I've been down the basement, you know, going down there to do something as simple as check on the sump pump.
Yeah.
And I thought the dog jumped up on my leg. I said, "What the heck are you doing?" And the dog is nowhere to be found. The dog is still sitting on the steps, you know. So it's very interesting. But yeah. So well, thank you, Cindy and Scott, for sending in that accounts of what you've done. I paraphrased most of it because she sent me a nice long email. But you know, there are people out there who have experienced this kind of stuff. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have the business that you have.
And there's a lot of people who've had experiences and they just outright deny them.
Right.
It's just I know people who just who are skeptical, but yet have been in the same places that I've been, where I've had experiences, and they're just like,
No, people think you're nuts.
yeah, oh yeah.
Well, that whole discussion, one of the things that triggered me a little worry is the provoking. The idea that you really need an effective medium or even effective cleanser in some way, shape, or form, because all they do is go away and come back. Mm-hmm. Now it's the family that's left there because you're sitting there having, and then as you provoke, that's why you get a lot of that pulling and touching and shoving.
Because you're ticking them off.
You're then showing them, and they're showing you that you can't make them leave.
They're just disembodied people, and you're still trying to pick a fight with them.
And it bugs me. When we were talking a little bit earlier about fakes, you know, some of these people who don't have that ability, when they come in there and say, "Oh, I've cleaned the house," that's almost always when it's much worse and like 3 weeks later. And then the people are going, "I need an exorcism because now instead of walking down the hallway, I'm being shoved down the stairs because now he's pissed off that, or he or she is pissed off that you did all this stuff." You got to be very careful with provoking.
I haven't thought about Eddie since, you know, I left that house.
Right.
My ex-wife and children stayed there. And a couple of years ago, I have several friends that are mediums. And a couple of years ago, and they're, you know, much like you, they'll go to places where they'll actually come out of there physically sick from the energy, you know. And, I mean, in this business, and I started talking about it earlier, a proponent of the universe puts you where you want. There are no accidents. I really believe there are no accidents. Everything happens in accordance to the plan, you know. And this, Eddie, a couple years ago, so this would have been like 2013, maybe.
Okay.
9 years after I left the home. I'm sitting there just hanging out with her, and we're talking, and she looks over at me and she says, "Who's Eddie?" And I said, "Eddie." I said, "Well, I was my ex-wife's cousin, but it was also the name of the guy who used to live in our home. He was the ex-husband of the woman that we bought our home from, my ex-wife and I." "Yeah, he's here." "Oh, really?" "What's Eddie got to say?" Because the last time Eddie and I spoke, it wasn't pleasant, you know, because I leave the house altogether, and I guess he chose to leave because other than those 3 knocks in December, there was nothing else that ever happened.
Right.
You know. So she said, "Yeah, Eddie." I said, "Yeah, because he pushed her because he didn't like the way things were going in your marriage." And I was like, "Really?"
Whoa.
I'm mad, you know. But so Eddie, you know, it's just, and out of the blue, she came out with that.
You gotta start leaving a beer for him to the Christmas spirit.
Yeah, right. Great. But yeah, so I was blown away because I never told her about the guy that used to live there, the spirit. You know,
They go where they want.
It was just,
you can't stop that. They go where they want.
Yeah,
especially
just,
if you're going to have that kind of connection with someone like that. They'll come along, and for all you know, he'd been standing there every year anyway. You just didn't know he was there until you finally talked to the person who's the medium.
And well, it's kind of funny now. And now, how I accepted the things that I denied since I was a kid, how I accepted them, and is that the same medium that I'm speaking to, her daughter's a musician. And she had been on my radio program before, and I had done gigs with her, and her daughter and I were very friendly. She was, I think, just a year or so older than my son. And one day I'm coming out of, I don't know where I was coming out of, the Bordentown Elks. I'd gone to the Elks for a chili contest or something.
Okay.
And I'm coming out of the Bordentown Elks, and I get this text from a number that I don't recognize.
Right.
But something told me to respond to it. And all the message said was, are you going home or staying in the hotel tonight? And I'm thinking, this got to be for somebody else. She must have dialed the wrong number. So trying to be a good guy, I send back a message, and the message says to her, I'm sorry, but I think you forwarded this to the wrong person. She said, no, aren't you Kelly? I said, no, Kelly is my sister. I said, did you want to talk to my sister? She said, no, Kelly is my daughter. And I'm like, this isn't my mother's cell phone number. Right? So I said, Kelly who? I said, is she lives down in Nashville. Wait a minute.
This is a lot of text going back and
Yeah.
forth, so you're really committed into finding this out.
Yeah, I said, is she a musician? She says, yes. I said, Maureen? She says, yes. I said, and she had gotten a new cell phone. That's why I didn't recognize the number. But she swears to this day she texted her daughter. And for some reason, it went to me. And she, on her phone, she saved it and showed me on her phone, it had her daughter's name and number, but that text came to me. Now, why would that happen? And from that point on, her and I became close, and she started to, like, she can't sit down next to me.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because the very first time I ever met her, she sat down next to me. It was in a bar, a restaurant, and I went to see her daughter perform. And I said, she's like, that's my mom. So I said, hey, how you doing? She says, excuse me. Reaches over, grabs a bar napkin, says to her friend, the other medium, let me have a pen. And she just starts like some kind of savant. Like her head, she's giving me, don't interrupt. She wrote down stuff about my family that there's no way she would know it. About my uncle and somebody who passed away, my grandparents, this, that. I was like, wow. And from that point on, we just became, intertwined forever. And it's funny because she's the one I was telling you, like if I wake up with scratches, she'll have them in the same spot.
Right, you mentioned that, right. But that whole connection also shows that she is embracing her gift well enough to say, it went to you, I need to know you. I need to understand, at least I need to explore that there's something, because that certainly couldn't have been that random when you started. And we just spent the last 15 minutes texting back and forth until we found this. That's absolutely an embracing of her gift.
Right. And it's
I want to go back to photos, because you sent me a photo that you wanted to talk about, and we actually have that queued up.
Can we cue that up?
Yes. And so, Mike, cue that up. And tell me a little bit about this photo, because I saw that, and that was
okay.
that was something.
I'm not sure when they cut to it. They're live. Okay, the photo's live. That's my nephew. My nephew is 6'4", 6'5". There's a restaurant. He had a partner, and they turned an old bank building. After the bank moved out and closed down, they turned it into there was a couple businesses, and they didn't last. They got out of there, like after only a few months. My nephew and his in Bordentown City. My nephew and his brother and his partner stuck it out. And if the picture is it still up, Nash? Okay, there's a picture above my nephew's head, who's 6'4". You can see there's a white orb. They're all over that building like fireflies in the summertime. I mean, you just close the lights and you can and if you just hold up a cell phone camera and take some video, it looks like nothing but shooting stars out in like Montana or Wyoming, and if you, on my phone, of course, you can pinch it and enlarge it. That orb, there's a face in there. And according to the mediums and the psychics, it's a little boy named Billy who's very angry. He died at the age of 8 or 9, and he's very angry. So he's very mischievous in a harmful sort of way. And that building is just littered with spiritual activity. I was on a paranormal investigation there with Cal Schwartz and some medium, and they're here now. I know they are.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you were looking the other direction. I would love to hear from the people watching later. Tell them if they see anything on any of the cameras at any point in time. Tell them what time frame. I already know that there's been people standing in this corner, and I don't know if anyone was seeing anything, but I literally just felt a hand on the top of my head.
Really?
3 fingers, just like this, on the top of my head, and Danny saw it. I'm looking around, and I know they're here, and I'm looking around. It's no cobwebs. That we were talking about this before the show, that the energy buildup was growing and growing. I know there was 3 entities over here. There was one in the corner over there, but
Yeah, before the show started, you're just getting like, you were feeling it.
I would not be surprised if we were talking about orbs. Somebody might actually see something, especially in the reflection of the light. That's why when you take flashes in the dark, you can't necessarily see them with your own eyes, but the energy reflection, the density of that energy is what's reflecting from the light. That's why I wouldn't be surprised that someone with the lights would actually see
Now,
something.
The funny thing about psychic ability, there are a lot of fake psychics out there. The lady who says $20, I'll read your tarot cards. You got a 50-50 shot, and that might be generous. You know what I mean? But it's important to tell everybody that we all have it, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
We all have the ability to be clairvoyant, to feel things, but it's a matter of opening your mind and allowing what you want in.
Yeah, you can't just dismiss everything.
You can't dismiss everything.
Not everything you experience will be something paranormal. Yeah, that is literally just paint falling off the wall.
Right.
I kind of talk about it. I mean, this here was my book for 18 months worth of visions that I didn't want. I didn't want any of that stuff, but I became a medical intuitive because of all the people I worked on. And after 50 or 60 of these, you got to agree.
Yeah, what's the title of the book?
The book is actually called Discovering Intention, A Sensitive's Guide to the Engineering Mind. So it's the entire discussion on not just the fact that I have all these visions, but also the fact that you have a scientific basis. There's a science basis on this. But I describe your entire discussion on sensitivity as baseball.
Okay.
You can show people how to become sensitive. You can show them what to look for, how to quiet their minds, how to use their intuition. I can't guarantee you're going to be, hit 300s in the majors, but I can give you the basics. Part of my role as a Reiki teacher is to teach people how to read energy. And if you're going to read energy, I can show you how to hit, I can show you how to feel, I can show you the rules. You go off and find out if you're clairvoyant, if you're clairaudient.
You know why I'm smiling? Do you know why I'm smiling? Because I'm
psychic, but no, I don't know.
I will call. Yeah, right. I will call my medium friend, and I will say to her, "What does this mean?" I don't know. I could tell you what the energy is, and she can read me over the phone because we're that connected.
I do that all the time.
She says, "But I don't know what it means." I said, "Well, how do I figure?" She goes, "Don't put pressure on yourself. You might not know it for 6 months." There was one time I was sitting in a bar, and I'm sitting with this couple I don't even know. And I'm sitting there, and the woman said something about somebody passing away. And as soon as she said that, strudel popped in my head. Strudel. I'm like, yeah, I think so. Why? Strudel. So it's the weirdest thing. If they want to find you, they'll find you. You can ignore, you can deny, you can do whatever, but what is this? What is this?
On the other side of things, you asked me earlier about my first paranormal experience. That is a paranormal documentary about the Wat and Tarbell mortuary. That's actually 8 months worth of video, audio, and really, when I talked about the provoking, this is the relationships that these two sisters have built with about, at least so far, 500 different spirits inside the mortuary. And part of the thing about this is one of the most amazing things is that in 1880, Tombstone had 3 mortuaries. New York City had 1. That's how many people were dying
in Tombstone,
in tiny little Tombstone and miners. And my favorite part is the fact that half the time you were unknown. They'd prop your body up in a window, and someone would try to come and identify you. Now, either A, no one knew who you were because you'd walk away and you'd be a miner, or B, no one wanted to pay the mortician. So they'd ignore the fact that they knew who you were. And the
Right.
mortician, after several days, back then you couldn't keep a body for too long.
Not in Tombstone, anyway.
Not in Tombstone, and eventually it'd be there. But this is actually a list of experiences, video, movies, even playing poker with the entities there, where they pick their own cards on the table and decide who's playing what. They actually bluff. They're pretty good at bluffing, actually. And it's really a relationship documentary. And one of the best things about it is they tell you their first name and last name. You go look it up on the records. Like there's an Adam Duke. He really was 20 years old. He really was a gunslinger in Tombstone. He wasn't a really good gunslinger. He died in, I think, his first or second fight. But these are all people you then research along with it. So this is actually the movie from
How do we find
Tombstone.
them?
My website, Dimensions Reiki, the books and the DVDs are all available. Plus, I go to, God, that's my home away from home. I go to Tombstone. My family doesn't even pick me up and take me to the house anymore. They pick me up at the airport. We go straight to Tombstone, 3-hour drive, because I want to go back to here. It's actually in the mortuary at SPY as well, but they're available on DimensionsReiki.com, TheResidenceHaunts.com, or I'd even recommend going. I'm telling you, this place is one of the most haunted places I've ever been.
Arizona,
One of the most haunted places ever.
Well, there's nothing haunted about Monmouth Music. At least not yet, anyway. Monmouth Music, established in 1987, is located in the center of historic Red Bank. For 30 years, Monmouth Music has served the local and traveling musician with brand name instruments and accessories at everyday low prices. Monmouth Music also welcomes aspiring musicians of all levels with a broad selection of affordable instruments, including school orchestra instruments for both sale and rental. Monmouth Music provides student lessons for all levels of talent, provided by long-tenured music teaching staff. In addition to providing brand name instruments and complete lesson plans for students, Monmouth Music is home to Bob Pinto's Guitar Hospital, specializing in string instrument repairs. There's also an in-house professional amplifier repair service by BP Electronics. Monmouth Music is owner operated, which ensures you will get professional and personal service every day. Come to Red Bank, New Jersey, and visit Monmouth Music. Make the trip; you won't be disappointed. Once again, I want to thank Mario DiBartolo very much for allowing us to come in here every Monday night at 8 p.m. One more with Danny Coleman. Nash, how much time do we have left, buddy?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay.
I also have a photo of my own that I want to talk about.
Okay.
I showed you guys this before. But, so for the viewers, friend was exploring this building and took a photo of this hallway just willy-nilly, just for posterity, and didn't realize until later that she captured this.
Those are some of the best.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't know why you took the picture, that's some of the best times to take the picture.
But the original photo was clear as day. Now, it's funny because I filmed a movie there, and from what I've heard is that when the film crew didn't want to go anywhere alone because they were afraid of the, quote, gray nurse. So, and then I thought this, okay, he said, she said, whatever, wasn't there, didn't experience it, don't know. Then I see this photo, get a little bit more evidence, and I want to start investigating this. A few days later, after my friend sent me this photo, we actually went to this place, and we went to that same hallway, stood where she took the photo, found the room, and after being in that room for about 30 seconds, all this weird stuff started happening. Stuff was moving at the other end of the hallway, and we all heard a voice in our ear, as if somebody just came up to you and like whispered something to you. And that was my biggest experience to date.
What did they whisper? Do you know?
I don't remember, but it was clear as day. In the moment, I just kind of like freaked out and tensed up and wanted to get out of there. But I just remember a very clear voice in my ear.
I wouldn't doubt it. A lot of, the whole sensitivity area of the level of energy it takes a lot of energy to manipulate the stuff around you. Moving stuff is very huge. That's one of the reasons why it's so easy when you hear voices. It's a lot easier for them to speak than it is to physically change and become more dense to move something. But it's all still energy.
Well, this place had a lot of energy because that building at this complex was known as the Mika building, which was the medically insane, chemically addicted wing. So you were
Lot of
not
anger
only
there.
yeah,
Little
not
bit,
only were you
little bit.
mentally ill, but you were also addicted to drugs, and so that there was a lot of anguish there.
Especially
And-
when you did that to yourself. Because after a while, that's all they treated them. They treated them with all the drugs.
And then there were also in the course of one winter, massive amounts of deaths because the boiler went out.
Freezing?
People froze to
They
death.
froze to
Wow,
death in their
okay.
beds.
So, hearing that from Matt and hearing from me, and you have people that call you and request your services, how can somebody help themselves? Let's say Jeff Carpenter's booked for 2 weeks. He can't get out. So now for 2 more weeks, they got to deal with this entity or this spirit or whatever psychological thing they have going on that's making them feel or think that they may have something. I remember I had a friend who was a police officer, and there was a woman who was starting to suffer from dementia.
Okay.
And at least once a month, they would get a call to have to go to her house and throw all the partiers out because they won't let me sleep. And there was nobody there. Or get that squirrel off of my curtain rod.
Right.
So she was beginning with dementia. So what advice can you give people in the interim before you can get there to ease their mind?
You actually had a good example. When you said you demanded either stop or leave, there's nothing wrong with the person who owns the house now, let's say if it's a person who's continuing to stay there, to empower themselves. The whole idea of demanding, saying, this is my house, you're not welcome, I'm changing the energy in the place, you are not supposed to be here, most of the time, they're going to leave. The other idea is exactly what you talked about in terms of saging. Saging helps regardless of how much you believe in it because it's the breaking up of energy. That's the important part. But you really cannot continue along the cycle of fear. The whole idea of being fearful,
Right.
let's just talk about bullies.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to sit there and say, I'm really sorry, and then the bullies keep beating on you? When you stand up to the bully, things change. Or when you stop reacting, they go away. Right. But the idea with the paranormal inside your home, you have to have the entire family come together, let's say at the dining room table, kitchen, wherever, and start the affirmation process. Really start to say, this is my home, you're not welcome, we don't want you here, stop. And then the sage is the next step, saying, now we're going to help you out of our home. I don't care where you go. Help you out of our home. And then that's when you start calling in people with a little more experience if you're still getting that kind of resistance. But most of the times, they're going to go.
It's true. Very true. Mario.
Yo.
Come here, Mario. Come on over. We're going to put Mario on camera right now. Everybody's going to get to see Mario of Mammoth
Mario.
Music here.
Very
Come
spitty
on
boy.
over and stand next to Matt here, Mario.
Yes, sir.
This is Mario. He's the owner of Mammoth Music. It's the man we speak of every week. And this, we have Nash, the whole crew,
TV
Jeff.
man.
You were talking to Jeff earlier
Yes.
this evening about.
Sure.
Were you able to hear the show out there? Were you listening?
Yeah, of course.
You know who I'm talking about when I say her daughter's a musician, lives in Nashville?
No.
Her son was your son was her guitar player.
Kelly.
Yep. Kelly.
Corbin.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
And
How is she? Do you see her?
I haven't seen her in a while,
Oh,
but her
she's great.
mom, Maureen, is my very good, close, medium friend.
Oh wow, I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, she's very well
Yeah.
connected, so to speak.
So to speak.
But you were talking to Jeff prior to us going on the air,
Yeah.
and did we resolve anything with that?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think
No.
we did.
I'm a hard read.
Well, that's
Actually,
There are people-
No one wants to talk.
there are
to me
people like
on
that.
the other side.
there is, and it's strangely enough, if you heard part of the show, there's a lot going on in your building right now.
That's, is that comforting or no?
I think it's fine because I personally think that they're here to enjoy what's taking place. There's nothing malicious or anything like
They all
that.
seem to be
So
pretty nice, and they're not doing anything.
no, they're making sure
I
that
wish
they're
they'd get me-
here.
Wish they get me
So
coffee.
I don't have to find like a new home now, so I don't get punched.
No. In fact, what we just talked about is how you can ask them to leave you alone. Let's have them go. Let's have them leave. They'll stay away from the area. They'll stay away from the building if you so choose.
But they're not bothering me. So
No.
they seem to be
As
okay.
long as you're okay with that statement, then that's
So
okay.
far.
Like I said, they got to buy something or get out.
Right.
I haven't had any.
They might bring customers, though. You ask that kind of stuff, you'd be surprised it starts walking in here.
They can't pay, can they? Is there a
No, you bring somebody else in here.
PayPal on the other side?
They might bring somebody in with them.
Okay.
They'll bring somebody along.
That's fine.
I have to say, you know what? I don't know why,
I'm very open to it.
but I had to
You're
go
welcome.
into your store.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
That's
all
good.
we want to hear. Just come in the store and buy something.
That's
totally
how it
works.
actually. That's how it actually kind of works.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Like
No, I
said,
believe it.
you know,
Yeah.
You
so
get
it's-
those messages that you don't expect what happened or why, or totally things that you would never even think of, and next thing you know, they're walking in the
Yeah,
store.
yeah, that's great. That's great. It's free advertising.
Why not?
Yeah.
So before we go, I wanna call out Matt, who's behind the camera right now. He's the only one. He's the only one to come in a costume today. So I'm gonna come over to Danny real quick. This was his costume. This is a Domino's box. And then he wrote on the back.
Nash.
That's good.
Well, we were trying to get everybody like cast and crew to come in for this show in costume, and
I have
It was
one. If you
generally-
guys gotten dressed up, I have a costume over here in the bag.
it was kind of widely opposed even by Nash, but Nash just like no, I got this,
That's how he.
And so
That's
he
how he
came up-
operates, Nash.
and so he came up with this.
There
So I
he-
just wanted to point that out
The get it done guy.
before
all right?
before we go off the air.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and share your experiences. And one more time, the websites, the book, wherever.
My business, Dimension Reiki, is in Aberdeen, New Jersey. DimensionsReiki.com for services as well as some of the products. And I'd love to hear from anyone who saw things on the broadcast today.
And I would love to just hear from anyone at all, like Cindy and Scott down in Florida, who view the program, and just email me at dcoleman.drice@gmail.com. Drice, D-R-I-C-E. So dcoleman.drice@gmail. And we'll keep this going a little bit. We'll read some stories here and there. We're going to introduce a segment very soon, a moment with Mario.
That could be
So
dangerous.
Mario he is the new owner of Monmouth Music. And next week we have Experiment 34 coming in, a young up-and-coming band from the New Brunswick area. 2 kids from Hamilton, 2
Oh,
kids
wow.
from New Brunswick.
Oh, that's great.
They base themselves in New Brunswick. Happy Halloween, Jeff.
Happy Halloween to
Great
everybody.
job on
yes.
the set, guys. And next week, one more. Good night.
Go.
Thank you.
No, thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you for having me. That's
Great.
great.
It went good. You talk like nobody's business, man.